All right. We are live.
Episode number
3.
Okay,
Holistic Hustle. Episode number 3. Welcome back.
let's do this.
Hope you enjoyed the first 2 episodes. We're back, Danny.
Let's do this thing.
You ready?
Always ready.
All right. So this time we're talking about the importance of nutrition, sir.
Mhm.
You're not only a certified fitness trainer, you're also a certified nutrition coach.
Certified.
Certified.
Yeah, man. Certified
Right.
nutrition coach.
Tell me a little bit about that. How did you come to that?
So the difference between a nutritionist and a nutrition coach, for me, has always been the fact that as a nutrition coach, it's more than just helping your clients figure out what to eat. It's about helping them develop a better relationship with their food, helping them overcome these kind of pre-existing habits and these pre-existing thoughts around food, and helping them come up with better habits, better relationship with food, and then eventually getting to making sustainable changes. But it does have a lot to do with psychology, and it has a lot to do with small, simple habits that they need to improve. And so,
And why is nutrition so important?
so nutrition is important primarily to help you feel better and to help you perform your best.
But like I heard something like abs are made in the kitchen.
Oh yeah, that cliche was saying, right?
Is that because I mean, okay, it's a cliche, right?
Yeah, it is.
But is
it's
it true?
It's true, right? But everybody's so obsessed with the aesthetic side of it, which I think is great. And that makes sense. 80% of the process, I would say 90% of the process is made in the kitchen, right? It's made through nutrition. It's like when people
Say that again. 80% of the results or the progress.
80% of results are, it depends on your nutrition.
Do y'all hear that? 80%.
Yeah. So like when a lot of people come into the gym and they want to work on this. Like they're looking at areas in their body that has primarily more adipose tissue, more fat in there, right? And you can't spot treat the body. This is something you and I talked about, right? You depending on like genetics and depending on like what sex you are, it determines where you store body fat. So you can't be like, all right, I'm just going to do 1,000 abs every single day and I'm just going to drop body fat. Like body fat is just kind of stored away in an area in your body that your body prefers to put it at, right? So it's just excess energy just stored away in the form of adipose tissue, which is fat. And so the best way to do it is start optimizing your diet. And so we can dive in a little deeper into that.
Yeah, we really should.
Yeah.
But when people are okay, I'm working out, I'm doing my thing, right? If you're wearing a nutrition coach, what do you do with someone? Like if that wasn't part of your skill set, you just train them physically and then that's it, and then or do all fitness trainers have some understanding of nutrition?
I think there are a lot of fitness professionals that have a basic understanding of nutrition because of their own journey themselves, right? And if they're taking care of their physical body, they've worked on their nutrition at some point or another. But a lot of fitness professionals go into situations where they're working with their clients and they're just giving their personal experience, right? So if it's a 30-something-year-old personal trainer that has like a 50-year-old female client, they're probably giving them the same nutritional advice that they would give themselves.
Got it.
But the most important thing is figuring out what that client is up against, right? So you first, as a nutrition coach, need to, or as a personal trainer and nutrition coach, you need to understand what their competing commitments are. So you need to get a better picture of their overall demands when it comes to their life. If they're parents, they're going to have less time. They're going to need to adjust their eating based off their kids and their family, their habits. So it's a lot. It's more complex than we think it is when it comes to nutrition. It's not just what you eat. It's not when you eat. It's not how much you eat. It's deeper than that.
Okay. So one of the things that I've realized is when I started, because you're talking about the personal journey of the trainer, right? But like my personal journey with nutrition wasn't always a good one. Like when I started trying to get fit and trying to get healthy, like you're saying, it is more complex, but it also, I think we also make it very complicated. We think it's more, right, than what it is. Like I just started by like drinking water, like just making small changes, right? Like I don't think we understand the value of a small step, right? There's a tremendous value, and then compounding that over time. Every time you do it. So I didn't do anything with nutrition when I first started working out. I just started drinking water.
That's good.
With every meal, just water. And then when I saw a little bit of a result there, because again, I was doing this on my own. I didn't have trainers. I was around people that were very health conscious. I think that also has a lot to do with
your environment,
who you surround yourself with. So like I said in the first episode, I was surrounded by very health conscious, wellness minded people, right? That, I mean, like I said in the first episode, my boss at the time was a bodybuilder.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
super health conscious. Every calorie counts.
Yeah. I mean, and one of my coworkers was like a biohacker, like, so like I was around the right people, right? But it wasn't in me yet. So I just started by drinking water. And then from drinking water, I started by cutting out like excess fried stuff. Like if I go get a burger to a drive-thru, I wouldn't get the fries. I would get the burger and the water. And then I started cutting portion control. And then from portion control, I started doing intermittent fasting.
Awesome.
And then after 6 or 8 months of that, then I did like a 30-day elimination diet detox, just to see what worked and what didn't work for me.
Okay. To figure out what was like causing certain things in your body.
Right. But I didn't jump right into like a full nutrition plan, and I got results, So I think sometimes, just what can you do from where you're at?
So it's funny you say that.
Why?
Because that's exactly how I personally work with my clients.
Yeah?
Yeah, so we don't introduce a new thing until that one thing is mastered.
Okay.
And it's for 2 weeks. So for 2 weeks, we just focus on one thing. And it's specific to what the client needs. And that takes a lot of questions, right? To figure out what that one thing is. And as a coach, it's not about what you think it is. It's what the client is comfortable with doing and what they have identified. So then it could be real specific or it can be kind of vague. Ideally, you want it to be as specific as possible so that way you could tackle that. But for 2 weeks, focus on that.
I like that.
And then as a coach, you have to think about, is it impactful enough? And if it is, let's keep going and then check in. Even if you have covered that for, like, let's say a month ago, check in with the client and see if they're still following through with that thing. With you, it was the water thing, right? Fundamentally, that's the most important thing.
Right.
I would put that as my number one thing to start. Yeah, just drink more water. And everybody's body's different, and it all depends on where you live, right? So down here in South Texas, you're probably going to want to drink more water than you do in a cooler state.
For sure.
Right? So it's just figuring out what that good sweet spot is. One of the easiest ways to figure out how much water you should be drinking is just by looking at your pee. The color of your pee.
The color?
Yeah.
What color should it be? What's the ideal?
As clear as possible, right?
With a hue of yellow?
A little tiny hue.
A hue of yellow?
But you'd be surprised so there's this chart, right, that I give my clients, and it's like, okay, track where you're at. And then they're like, oh, this is where I'm at currently. And it's like gold.
Whoa.
You're like, okay, yeah.
You're completely dehydrated. You're very dehydrated.
You're very dehydrated. That's the easiest way to figure out. So when you hear all these recommendations or you do a Google search.
A hint of yellow, folks.
Teeny tiny.
A tiny.
Teeny tiny, yeah. And so that's something you could do right now to figure out if you're hydrated or not.
Okay.
Is look at the color of your pee. So that would be my number one thing.
So water. That's crazy. That's how you do it. Because I was just kind of like doing what I mean, I guess maybe in some way, shape, or form, maybe I was just trying to do the least amount possible.
To drink the water?
Because I still wanted to eat my foods.
Yeah.
Is that, like, what would you say people struggle with the most?
When it comes to nutrition?
No, just the fitness journey. Like, I'm going to work out. I'm going to hire a trainer. and then boom, I'm doing my thing. I'm working out 3 times a week. What have you noticed that people struggle with the most?
I think it is nutrition.
Right?
It's always nutrition. Like one of the things that you can prove to yourself that you can do consistently well is the exercise, right? Like that teaches it's you develop mental resilience, you develop a routine,
discipline.
But there is way more discipline when it comes to food.
Man, I know.
But I think people have an all or none mentality when it comes to nutrition. They're like, "Oh, I failed this morning, so I'm just going to continue failing for the rest of today." Or if you're looking at it from an entire week standpoint, as long as they're like making improvements, right? Ideally, you want the client to be eating minimally processed foods that are balanced for at least 80% of the week, and they have that 20% to work with as far as like flexibility goes.
Well, we said it last time. We said, hey, you can make C's and still make progress.
Oh, yeah.
You can work your way up to a B. Like, you have an entire week,
But first, I think it's so important to meet with the person in front of you and figure out where they're at. So you as a coach can meet them exactly where they are at.
And starting from there.
Because
it's not like, not everybody's the same.
Like you use that reference, right? Like you won't know exactly what the end goal is, right? Like a GPS. You need to first give that GPS its location.
Where they're currently at.
Where are you currently at before you try to figure out where you need to be.
So what causes people to, from your experience, I mean, how long have you've been a trainer, Danny?
10 years almost. Yeah.
So from your experience, why is it that nutrition is such a struggle?
That's a fully loaded question, man. So nutrition...
Well, like, break it down for us as simple as possible.
As simple as possible. The reason it's what?
So it's just such a struggle for people.
The reason it's a struggle is because people want to be perfect. And they're also... I think it has a lot to do with like wanting to be perfect all the time when it comes to nutrition. And if they're not perfect,
then throw it out the window.
So they don't understand that it's a journey. Like nutrition, it has a lot to do with our upbringing. It has a lot to do with our thoughts around food, and it has to do with behavior and feelings as well. So if you're feeling a certain way and you have, let's say you need something comforting in the form of food, you need to first identify that as like you need to have awareness around that, right? So you need to be aware that you're doing that one thing. So the one example I've been using recently is whenever my son was born. Yeah, so I told you that story, right?
Yeah, that's a good story.
He was 2 months old, and my wife went back to work, and I'd take care of him for the whole evening. And at first, it was a new journey as a dad, right? And also, he was born right before Halloween. And so there was all this Halloween candy left over, right? Going into the new year, because I was like, I'm not going to eat it, whatever. And so I started taking care of him. And I noticed every time he cried.
But like uncontrollably, like where you couldn't calm him down?
Yeah, where it was like more than like 5 minutes. Which he's an infant, right? Yeah. Like
that's what they do.
He wanted that love. He was breastfed.
He was wanting that booby.
Yeah, that booby, that mama.
Yeah.
That smell, that
comfort,
that warmth. I'm like, I can't give you that, buddy. Here's a bottle.
It's not the same.
It's not the same. He's just fighting all along. Yeah. He's like, ah. So it would be cry, would be the trigger. And the response to that would be me reaching over for this big-ass bag of chocolates, taking not just one, but a handful.
But like every time.
And it happened. And it wasn't, granted, I wasn't taking care of him every night. But when I was abusing those chocolates. So this is really funny because we got together as a family. So we alternate holidays, right, between my wife's family and my family. So that year we had an infant, and it was it was the time to meet up with the Lopez family, right, with our side. And so I didn't realize this till afterwards, but the whole talk around, the big talk around
the table
was Danny's big belly.
What's up, Danny? What's going on?
What's going on? And like, of course they weren't going to approach me, but they had like talked about it afterwards, right, to me. And by then I had already realized. But that was the big talk around the holidays, right? How Danny had gained some weight. And even we played a little
Danny, the fitness trainer.
Yeah, gained 15 pounds. I gained 15 pounds during that time. And it's a lot of, and then it really opened my eyes to like the amount of the impact, mental, emotional,
the connection,
but the load, right? If you're carrying a big emotional and mental load, you're less
and if you don't have other ways to
cope,
to cope with it,
if you don't have other healthy ways to cope, and that's like your form of comfort,
that's your go-to.
But also, if you're also not prioritizing yourself during that time. And I think I gained not just a level of understanding, but almost I became more empathetic with my clients.
Ooh, I love that.
Because I was this 20-something-year-old punk trainer for the longest time, no kids. And so for the longest time, I didn't know what my clients were up against. I'd be like, here's the nutrition plan.
But now you know.
Here are the macros. Here are the calories. Go do it, Mrs. Jones.
Why aren't you doing it?
Why aren't you doing it? And just checking in and being kind of like that quote-unquote hard-ass coach, right? And now...
Which has a place, but also, too, there's a little bit of compassion, a little bit of grace, a little bit of understanding.
It had a place, but it was like those same clients that I was working with, I'd get so frustrated, but I didn't have any resources or any point of reference to, like, relate to them.
Right.
Because I didn't know what they were
You hadn't
going
gone through it yet.
Yeah. So so that was cool. I gained that weight, but then I became aware of my behavior, and then I was able to like bounce back. And so I used that as a way of connecting.
Now you're more relatable, and now you have a better understanding. Yeah. I love that. I think that goes to show you that this fitness journey is not just about the body, especially when it comes to nutrition. Because what your story tells me, there was stress, which triggered a behavior, a way of coping with it that wasn't the healthiest. So that means there's a mental, emotional component that needs to be looked at. And this podcast is called Holistic Hustle for a reason, because we're looking at the holistic side of all of this. There's a physical component, there's a mental component, an emotional component, and a spiritual component. And so if we're just focusing on the fitness side, and then you're adding the nutrition, which is good, and you're struggling with the nutrition, there could be another component that you're not taking care of, that you're not looking at. Right? So you got to nurture your mind. How are you dealing with stress mentally, emotionally, maybe even spiritually? Right? So you cannot neglect those parts. And if you don't have things in place already to help you deal with the stresses of life, systems, right? You're going to go to what you've known. Oh, this helps me feel good. And if we're talking about mental health, we're talking about dopamine hits, right? Right? Starting to feel good, the feel good hormone, right? So that's what's creating a lot of the struggle, is that we're not aware. Like you said, it took a lot of awareness for you to see the trigger, the response to the trigger, and then the results. But if you're not thinking about it like that, and if trainers are not equipped with that kind of mindset, they're just focusing on fitness, very little nutrition based on just their own experience, because they're not maybe trained on that. And if they're not aware they're not taking care of their own mental, emotional, spiritual health, how are they going to fully support a client? They can take them to a certain point, but then there's, again, mental, emotional, spiritual components that are missing, because this is a whole being, right? And so by taking a holistic approach, you're going to really, truly, truly experience health.
A whole being and everything messy that comes with it.
That's right.
Yeah, multifaceted person.
Amen. So, bro, what are your... Like, if people are watching this podcast, okay, great. You're telling me how nutrition is, like, so important. It's 80% of the thing. Like, what do I got? What are the, like, 5, top 3, top 4, your top 7? What is it for you that can help me make some real changes and get results?
Well, good thing I brought some cheat notes.
You're prepared?
Some little notes.
I love that.
So the first thing we've already covered, right, is making sure that you're hydrated. The reason you want to make sure that you're hydrated, number one, is to make sure that your brain can regulate like the craving cues, right? Sometimes when you are craving sugar, it's the same level of like the same sensation as if you're dehydrated. So it has the same, I don't know, like the same
physiological
connection. Yeah, the same physiological connection as when it comes to like, especially with sugar, right? If you're dehydrated, you're more likely to crave high sugary foods because of the same area of the brain that is received.
Like triggers that.
Yeah, that is received. So that's one. When hydration, right? And it helps feeling fuller longer, and it helps just regulate your whole entire body's processes, right? Number 2, prioritize your protein intake. And so there's a lot of stuff out there, right? I would say at least start working. Almost everyone that's going to be watching this weighs at least 100 pounds, right? So I would say a good start is to eat at least 100 grams of protein.
Eat your weight in protein.
At least start with 100 grams of protein. Eventually you get to the point where you can start eating 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight.
Okay.
But there's a bit of adaptation that needs to happen because you're gonna get something that's called the protein farts. And for those people out there, you know exactly what I'm talking about. So it's you have to get used to that, right? And then you also have to remember that your body can only absorb a certain amount of protein in one sitting. So if you're like, oh, I ate 60 grams of protein and you're a 15-pound person, well, where's that protein going to go, right? If it's not being absorbed, it's going to go in the form of waste. Your pee and your poop. Your body's going to get rid of it because it's not being
processed.
Yeah.
Right.
So that's number 2. Number 3, eat minimally processed foods. And then increase your vegetables.
Because it's so convenient.
Convenient, yeah. So there's a lot of stuff out there, and this kind of plays into the whole protein intake, right? So sometimes it's good to supplement with protein powders and bars and stuff like that. But you don't always want to rely on that.
Right.
Like one of the most eye-opening things is whenever I tell a client, okay, increase your protein intake, and they're like, oh, I did so good. And then they give me that food log. It'll be like a protein bar, 2 protein shakes a day, maybe 1 meal with like chicken or beef or whatnot. And then the rest is just like all these processed things, right? So what I mean by minimally processed things, it's stuff that doesn't have a food label to begin with, right? It doesn't have an extensive list of ingredients either. There's not a lot of X's in the ingredient list, and it's mostly stuff that goes bad pretty fast, right?
Got it.
So it would be something like you a piece of chicken or a piece of steak, maybe fish, turkey. And then as far as like carbohydrates, that's the big one too, is something that is as brown and close to the ground as possible, right? And so what I mean brown is like not as like minimally processed stuff. Like when you start removing things, it's like white bread, the rice. So the polar opposite of that. Right. Even something, it's more orange, but like sweet potatoes are great. Regular potatoes, great. Right? It's not processed very much. It just comes straight from the ground. And you wash it up and you chop it up. So that's a good,
I like that. Wash it up, chop it up.
Wash it up, chop it up. And the same thing goes for vegetables, right? Like
brown and as close to the ground too?
No. No.
That's rotten, bro.
That's rotten. Something, just eating a variety of vegetables, right? Not just sticking to the greens, the oranges.
Like you said, eat the rainbow.
Skittles is going to sue us.
Right. It's trademark.
So the 4th thing is eating slowly and mindfully, right? I think, and you could throw me in the mix too, but I think we as a society never take a break.
Right.
And we're
always go.
And we're on our device all the time. And so it's important to figure out, number 1, like, are you taking a break for yourself to just
like take an actual break
food?
And be present with what you're doing
and appreciate the food for what it is, right? Like,
mindful eating is one of the mindfulness exercises that you can do to actually develop mindfulness, which is like no distractions, savor every bite, describe it, narrate it, feel it. It's crunchy, it's sweet, it's soft, it's smooth. There's a little bit of, like if I'm eating a grape, like put a grape in your mouth and then describe it to yourself as you're eating it.
It's amazing, right?
That's being present. Eating. That's mindful eating.
And it goes beyond just sitting on a rock or sitting on a hill overlooking this beautiful scenery, or
Right.
what everybody thinks is
Right.
mindfulness.
Right.
You can practice mindfulness.
You can do mindful driving.
Yep.
You can. You can do everything mindfully.
Mm-hmm.
Everything.
But yeah, slowly and mindfully
Mm-hmm.
is that fourth thing. And what do you think the fifth one would be?
So if the fourth one was eating slowly, eating mindfully.
For the record, it's not like what everybody would think that is like the 5 things. That's just my personal take on nutrition.
Well, that's what we want to hear. We want to hear your take on it.
Yeah.
I don't know. Tell me. Surprise me.
So this kind of goes into process stuff, but it's very specific. And this is like the kind of like the pinnacle of it all.
Yeah.
You got to be working on this, and then eventually, if you can work on this, it's almost like you get to Bowser.
Yeah.
Playing Mario Bros. Right? So
you
it's,
get to the final villain,
boss,
right?
The final boss. That's reducing your sugar intake.
Bro, everything has sugar.
Okay, so processed sugar.
Okay,
I keep it pretty simple. Yeah, everything has sugar, especially here in the U.S.
I know.
I didn't realize how much high fructose corn syrup is here in the U.S. Whenever
know.
I first moved to the United States, everything tasted different. Like I had a Coca-Cola in Mexico. I had
Those
same
are the
one here.
best.
I'm like, whoa, what is this? And even ketchup. I think I just told Sarah this, my wife. Like ketchup tastes so much different.
I believe
here because it's a high fructose corn syrup.
Mm-hmm.
But there is a sugar in almost everything. What I like to start with my clients is just reduce
Added.
Yeah, or swap. Reduce your sugary drinks, because that's a big chunk of calories.
But that brings us back to number 1. Drink water.
The swap. Dang, you have good memory. I had to look down at my notes for that.
The swap, bro.
Yeah, the swap. That something has to be swapped, right? We did a challenge, and not to call anyone out, but we've realized like how much how many Coca-Colas that person was drinking, and how like the lack of water she was drinking, right?
Correct.
It's so eye-opening.
Yep.
And you can still be functional. That's the thing about the human body. It's so resilient. It's not optimal. It's not healthy.
It's not optimal. But eventually, it's going to catch up to you.
It's going to catch up. Yeah.
I love this, bro. This is such good stuff. Like, I hope that you can see how essential this is. Like, this is really important. And in the conversation, I hope that you can also realize that there's other components. Like, there's a holistic approach to health, to truly being healthy. I say this all the time. There's that documentary on Netflix, Jonah Hill's therapist.
Oh, yeah.
I think it's called Stunts.
Mm-hmm.
He says when someone says they want to get healthy, the first place and where they're going to get the most benefit is from working out.
Mm-hmm.
You know, movement and eating well.
The gateway drug.
Yeah, the gateway drug, like we discussed in the first episode, right? But you're only going to get 85% of the benefit.
It's a big chunk.
It's a big chunk.
But it's not optimal.
It's only going to get you to a certain point. And then the real heavy lifting comes, which is you got to do your mental work, your mental health work, your emotional health, and your spiritual health. It's not going to be enough just to stay on the physical, on the movement, and the nutrition. It's a great start, but again, it's got to lead into more. And if you're struggling with nutrition, if you're already doing fitness and you're struggling with nutrition, I hope that in this conversation you can hear some of the things that could be possibly creating the struggle or the challenge that you need to be looking at, which is your mental health, your emotional health, and your spiritual health.
It's all
connected. All right.
Good work, man.
See you in the next one.